we've just had the autumn statement, and thankfully pensions didn't come up a huge amount in that. There were three key areas that were talked about. Firstly, there's going to be a real crackdown on pension cold calling, which we think is going to be a really positive change. There's too much out there at the moment going on targeting people with quite often low values, telling them they can access it in different ways, and it's almost always to the detriment of the member. They also talked about they're going to review the pension triple lock that applies to state pension. This is where the state pension will either increase in line with wages, with inflation, or at 2.5%. For a long time, it's felt like that's quite an unsustainable promise to be making, so we think that a review is probably overdue. The other area that they'd looked at was what we call the money purchase annual allowance. So this is the amount of money that people can pay into a pension after they've flexibly accessed their money. And the idea is really to stop people recycling pensions. So you take some earnings that you've got, you pay it into a pension, and then you take it out of the pension again, but 25% of the amount you get back out is tax-free. So it's a good way of flushing earnings through a pension and saving tax. Now, obviously, HMRC is not terribly happy about that. So in the past, we've had a money purchase annual allowance at £10,000. There is a consultation open until February the 15th next year, where they're looking to bring that £10,000 limit down to £4,000. Now, the view that I had previously is that £10,000 is a reasonable level. On reflection, I think that actually £4,000 is not unreasonable. 97% of the population pay in less than £4,000. If you think about it against the median wage in this country at about £27,000, it represents about a 15% contribution. Again, there's very few people in the UK who pay 15% into their pension. So I don't see it as having a major impact, and it probably will help to a reasonable degree to stop some of the abuses of the tax relief that the government is worried about. I think it's one of those things that they can make a small change. If it saves some tax, then it's probably worth doing. It's not a big change that's going to upset the electorate, so it's not going to, cause difficulties for the Tories going forwards. But if it's a stroke of a pen to change it from 10,000 to 4,000 and it saves, £10 million, let's say, it's a stroke of a pen worth having. It is possible that flagging it up will encourage people who weren't previously minded to take this loophole. The thing I would say is that I think not many people will really want to go through the hassle of actually doing this. The amount of money you save versus the complication of actually going to the trouble of putting the money into the pension, setting it up in a pension that allows you that sort of flexible access, doing that year after year is probably going to be more effort than it's worth for a lot of people. There's also some expense involved as well. Most pension companies would charge you extra for providing a kind of pension that allows you flexible access. So I think a lot of people will just say, for £4,000, for the tax saving on £4,000, it's not really worth the bother. Yeah, if you haven't already flexibly drawn, I think it is worth looking at your total pension savings, seeing whether you've built up enough in your fund at that point, and then if you haven't, to really think about maximising contributions before you go into that flexibly accessed pot. Once you're there, restricted to £4,000, you may well find it's quite difficult to then build up a meaningful pot again. The government was looking to try and protect people in certain situations by setting the limit at 4,000. In theory, they could have just banned it entirely. They could have just said, if you flexibly access your pension, you can't pay anything into a pension anymore. What they were trying to do was help people, for example, who maybe got divorced and lost part of their pension scheme in the divorce. They wanted to give those sort of people who maybe have previously flexibly accessed the opportunity to still build up some of their fund. Obviously, for those people, it's a little bit too late. They would already be subject to the 4,000 limit, but we would always encourage people who have not yet taken their money to just think about maximising the contributions that they can afford, take advantage of the tax advantages that still exist. You never know what's around the corner with pensions. The Chancellor mentioned in his speech that he was still concerned about the 48 billion that is spent by the Exchequer every year on pension tax relief, particularly that 32 billion of that 48 billion goes to higher rate taxpayers. Now, that's always felt a little unfair I mean, the Chancellor will say that he feels it's unfair. Whether he really believes that or not is another matter. But what they're really trying to do is target the lower paid, basic rate taxpayers, non-taxpayers. They really want the tax relief to go to those groups who probably are in slightly more need of actually building up their pension funds. So particularly for higher rate taxpayers, we may well see something coming through next year which further restricts the tax relief available on pension contributions for them. Again, another good reason to really maximise the contributions while they can now.